Hi everyone. Let's talk about relative frequency tables. Now, a frequency table consists of this column of age classes over here and this column of frequencies over here. But instead of the frequency column, we could have a relative frequency column, maybe in decimal form or percent form. So the age classes together with the relative frequencies in either form, that will give us a relative frequency table. We're going to construct a relative frequency table for the president's ages. The relative frequency of each age class is obtained by dividing the corresponding frequency by capital N, the population size. For sample data, we would divide by little n, the sample size. Here, capital N is 45, the population size. And on homework or exams, I'll tell you how to round off. So over here, I give you this frequency table. And then for each of these age classes, you take the corresponding frequencies and you divide by the population size, 45. So for example, what's our modal class here? Which age class was most frequent? The modal class was the low 50s class, 50 to 54 years old. There were 13 ages in that class. 13 divided by 45 is 0.289 as a decimal. So that's the proportion. By the way, how can you rewrite a decimal as a percent if I want percent form? Well, the idea is that you multiply by 1, which is 100%. How do you multiply by 100%? You take the decimal point here, you move it 2 places to the right, so you get 28.9, and you attach the percent symbol. 0.289 is 28.9%. So about 29% of the presidents were in their early 50s when they became president. That's the modal class, the highest relative frequency. The lowest, of course, is 0 up here. As a check, you can check to make sure that the relative frequencies here add up to 1. If you work this out, to 3 decimal places, these add up to 1.001. But should that freak you out if these add up to 1.001? Well, no. These add up to 1.001, but that can be explained by round-off errors. Now, if you add these up and you get 2 or 3, or something like that, or a negative number, then worry, okay? But if it's 1.001 or 0.999 is the sum, I think you're okay as a check. The percents have to add up to 100%. Again, if you're a tiny bit off, you could chalk that up to rounding error. Now let's talk about some more terminology regarding classes. Now here we have 8 classes. Again, the number could depend on a formula, or it just kind of made sense, right? High 30s, low 40s, high 50s, and so forth. But let's take a look at this age class over here, 35 to 39 years old. The 35 here is the lower class limit. The 39 here is the upper class limit. The class width is 5 years for each class. Remember, the classes should each be the same size. They should have the same width. Technically, to get the class width, you're looking at the differences between the lower limits of these classes. So for example, the first class has as its lower limit 35 years old. The second class has its lower limit 40 years old. 40 minus 35 is 5. So the class width is 5 years. Each of these classes has width 5 years. It didn't have to be 5 years, but relatively speaking, 5 is a nice round number. In principle, you could have used 4 years, 6 years, whatever, but it's got to be the same width for each class. Now, one nice thing about frequency and relative frequency tables is that you can apply them to quantitative data, like ages, but also you can apply them to qualitative data, like presidents' political parties. Okay, political parties, not parties as in parties with beer. All right. So for example, Donald Trump is a Republican. I guess I should use purple as a neutral color here. Okay, Donald Trump is a Republican. Barack Obama was a Democrat, George W. Bush was a Republican, and so forth. These parties are qualitative. They're qualitative. Now, you might have a ranking, that's like ordinal data, but objectively speaking, the parties are qualitative data. The values of the parties represent qualitative data values. All right, well, you can do a frequency table. We've had 16 Democrats, 19 Republicans, 4 Whigs, and 6 others. In fact, the first 6 presidents were others, mostly Federalists and Democratic Republicans. All right. But again, these frequencies should add up to capital N, 45. To get the relative frequencies, again, you divide these by 45. And the relative frequencies could be written as maybe fractions or rounded off decimals or percents. The modal class here would be Republican, at least based on the way that we're assigning the party labels. Different historians do it different ways. All right. Next up, how can you use pictures or graphs to represent data? These might be prettier. Next time. And by the way, the footnotes here you can skim over. The key aspects I'll go over in class.